Hello. Please let me see your ticket stubs for the double-edged double bill. Tonight's films feature Sucker Punches Gone Haywire. Each week, Adam Thomas and Thomas Mariani will come to the table to discuss the randomly selected yin and yang of a double feature. Then, both will have to pick a number between 1 and 10 in order to seal their fates for the next episode. One will have 2 good movies, the other 2 bad ones. Let the chaos begin. I am Adam Thomas.
And I am Thomas Mariani, and we have a very special guest with us this evening. She is a podcaster in her own right and a writer and a friend of mine. It is Sarah Sorrentino, Associate Editor of Talk Film Society. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Hey, do you guys think that Thomas thing is funny? Did you do this on purpose?
It's the entire point of our gimmick.
Yeah.
That's all we have.
What it is. That's it. Grasping at straws here.
That's good.
Thank you for
good
noticing.
For you. You're welcome.
I like the double S's in your name.
Yeah, it's cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Alliteration is all we have anymore in this crazy world. But Sarah, you're our guest for the evening with our topic about female-led action films. And I gave you a list of topics and you decided on this one. And aside from the obvious fact that you are an action hero, like you're built like Gina Carano, obviously. You guys can't see it, but it's incredibly intimidating.
Super buff.
Exactly. Why female-led action films? Why'd you want to come on for this one?
I'm gonna be honest, Thomas. I was worried that you were going to get a guy for this, and I was like, wait, we really need to get a girl in here. You gave me an options. I'm going to go ahead and get in on this while I still can. But also, just the fact that I like action films. I watch a lot of, like, shoot-'em-ups and stuff like that. Like, probably my favorite is Rock'n'Rolla and Smokin' Aces. And I don't watch that many female-led action films. So this was a good chance for me to watch 2 female-led action films that I thought I had seen Haywire before. Ooh, was I not supposed to say?
You've ruined the entire bit now.
Did I ruin it? Oh, God.
We're 5 seconds and you ruined everything.
Turn it off. I thought I had seen one of the films before, but I had not.
Which
as much
one
as
was
I
that,
thought.
Haywire? You thought you saw Haywire before?
Oh, God. I'm so sorry.
That doesn't matter. We said the titles at the beginning of the show.
Oh, I'm not good at other people's podcasts. I just rant on my own so I can say whatever. And then if I do it wrong, I just edit it out. It's so much easier. 2 films I hadn't actually seen before, and you guys made me watch. So I feel pretty good about this. I'm pretty excited to talk about it.
Doing female-led action films in honor of when this is coming out. It'll be the week of Captain Marvel coming to theaters. And we're doing, in honor of this, our good pick, which was Adam's choice, Haywire, the Steven Soderbergh film from 2012. And then my choice, which was the 2011 film from Zack Snyder, Sucker Punch.
Thanks for that.
We'll get into all of that in a bit. But, I mean, Adam, you can also agree that, like, it's unfortunately in short supply, these female-led action films, and it's good to have one come out there with, like, Captain Marvel and even these other ones, even if some of them aren't great.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they're more or less in short supply when it comes to one central female character, because when I was looking up ideas for movies, it's female-led action films, a lot of them were, like, ensemble pieces, where it just happened to have a female character in it. But as far as having, a straight action film with only a kick-ass female lead, kind of few and far in between.
Right, and whenever one does come up in one of those supporting cast ones, it sort of becomes the type in a famous movie. Like, how many freaking Vasquez's did we get after Aliens?
Oh my god.
Like,
we're still getting Ripley's. We're still getting Ripley's.
But let's go ahead and get into our films then. Let's first start off with Steven Soderbergh's Haywire.
You got a car?
The Barcelona deal went down. I fix it.
You can tell me right now why you sold me out, or you can tell me when I have my hands around your throat.
This
this January.
Should I be nervous?
I'll let you know.
Finding the truth
She was a Marine. She does something. There must be a reason for it.
will be her most dangerous mission.
What did you do? I did what I was contracted to do.
But isn't there someone you should be calling to bring help?
Haywire.
You better run.
So, Haywire came out January 20th, 2012, from, as we mentioned, director Steven Soderbergh, stars Gina Carano. What I really like about just Haywire in general is just the fact that it kind of feels like the script for a shitty straight-to-video action movie, just done by Steven Soderbergh.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's had this theory before, but I've got some theories about this movie.
Well, go ahead, you have the floor.
Okay. This is a Bond movie. This is Soderbergh's like, I'm going to do a James Bond movie real quick. And he's like, I'm going to cast a bunch of famous, attractive men, and she's going to kill them. It's wonderful. I love it.
I can't disagree. I'd throw it more maybe along like a Bourne movie than a straight Bond movie, just because of the renegade, like,
You know why I say Bond? Why I'm saying Bond, though? It's the music.
which I found incredibly jarring.
But it's on purpose. It is very jarring, though, and that's why I'm not very good at noticing movie soundtracks. Never have been. I'm not going to pretend to know composers and stuff like that. There's other people in the film community who know so much more about that than me. But the fact that it's jarring enough that I paid attention and I was like, why is James Bond music playing right now? Oh, he's doing this on purpose. And then even the Barcelona scenes with the no talking, weird stylized editing. Like, he's just really wants to make a James Bond film right now and just have a female lead. And I've been saying, I'm always one of those people that I'm like, do we really need a James Bond again? Do we need another James Bond? Can we just do something entirely different? Can we just throw a girl in there or something? I didn't know that this was what I was waiting for. I've only been, 7 years behind?
I definitely feel like his spin on that. He's been doing this for like the last 20 years or so, since like an Out of Sight, where he takes like genre pictures and he just does his own sort of minimalized, a lot more intimate version of it. Well, you mentioned the music. I think that really works, especially when most of the fight scenes don't have any music.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah.
I think that's why I thought I had seen this before, though, because I remember people talking about this film when it came out. I think I went out of my way to watch some of the fight scenes, and I misled myself into thinking I'd actually seen the movie. All of those choreography scenes are amazing to me.
Yeah, definitely. We'll discuss the fight choreography a lot more. But Adam, why don't you go ahead? This was your pick, so why don't you go ahead? Why did you decide to pick Haywire?
Like we talked about already, there's not a lot of strong female lead action movies where it is just centered on a female. And this is like one of the last good ones that I can remember, so I definitely wanted to pick a more recent one for this. Plus, just, even though not to say that she's an acting force, but where Gina Carano's got her start, and just the stacked cast, and I mean the camera work in this too is quite fantastic. And yeah, the fight choreography and everything else, it just works for the most part. Yeah, like I said, the music, and then Thomas, what we were talking about pre-show, but still, I think it's a breeze to get through. It's an hour and 30 minutes or hour and 37 minutes or whatever, so it's not like it's a huge chore. And I just think it's a decent, small action movie.
I mean, it's more than decent if you compare it to how many action movies men get to be central of. And I'm sorry, I'm thinking of Expendables. Like, every single person in Expendables has had 20 movies that are like this but shittier.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, no.
What I'm saying is I actually kind of like that a female-led action movie is to this quality, where it's not a Resident Evil or, like we said earlier, a Vasquez or Ripley clone. It's some new character, original character. Well, original might be pushing it, but it's a new character, a new story, the stacked cast all built around this female lead. So I think that's why I picked it.
I would be happy to have like a kind of a campier Jean-Claude Van Damme like action hero that's a female, though. I'd be exceptionally happy to see just a bunch of straight to video female-led action
films.
Those
are out there. They're not that. You can find those, definitely.
I would recommend Cynthia Rothrock.
I was
her filmography.
Fuck you, Thomas. That's exactly what I was going for.
Just real quick though, is she highly sexualized?
Kind of.
Depends on the movie.
Could it be a softcore porn? Be honest with me.
No.
They would not. Yeah.
Okay, then I might be interested.
Yeah,
Not that I have anything against softcore porn. I just, if I want to watch an action film, I maybe don't want to watch a softcore porn. I want to keep it separate, guys. That's all I'm
She was
asking.
an ass kicker. Cynthia Rothrock was an ass kicker. I would definitely recommend maybe those.
Imagine like a Chuck Norris movie, but
Yeah.
with like a solid female lead in it. She had like a lot. She had a big run in the '90s, especially of those kind of direct-to-video. They're very fun, schlocky movies.
Is she built like an action star?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
She's
Okay,
like
guys.
a Golden Gloves champion or something. That's what she was.
Yeah.
Nice.
But back to Haywire, I will say, I do agree that, like, I like Gina Carano in this part. I just think what you were referring to, what we talked about off mic before Sarah got on, was that the weird sort of choice to change her voice, I think it kind of bothered me when I first saw this in the theater. I was like, her voice sounds odd, and then I found out they changed it, manipulated it in the sound post. But then, especially this watch, it's just like, you can clearly tell she's mixed in a weird way, where it's like, any scene where she's like talking to somebody directly, it's just, she sounds completely like she's in a different room entirely. And it's so weird, and apparently it was because Gina Carano did like an interview that I listened to, where she said, it was basically because she was an MMA fighter before this, she wanted to kind of differentiate herself from her character that she has an MMA fighter, but I think in practice it's just kind of an odd choice. I don't know, did that bother you at all, Sarah?
It's a little sexist, to be honest. There may be, like she said, a better reason behind it, but like read that, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. Why does she have to have a deeper voice to be taken seriously as a badass?
The only thing I could even maybe come up with, because when she does talk, because I did the same thing, I went and listened to a bunch of interviews, so I'm like, what is the deal? I don't understand. She does have a bit of like almost like a surfer accent, and that's the only thing I can think of to where maybe they didn't think that would vibe. But
that never stopped Keanu, though. Like,
I was just going to say, to me, it'd make the character even more relatable. It'd make her more real than just this robotic, deep voiced. I don't understand the choice there at all.
And then plus what I think works is that you don't necessarily need that for her to be relatable at all, because I like the fact that she does have, like, down and dirty moments where she is actually hurt and she is, like, vulnerable. Like, obviously there's the bit with, like, her and the kid from Sky High, which I completely forgot that was the kid from fucking Sky High until I was watching this again.
This is a sequel to Sky High.
Exactly.
He's a sidekick.
This should have ended with, like, a split Unbreakable style thing.
Oh
him
my
at a
God.
freaking cafe. They call him Mr. Sky High. Her getting her arm fixed by that guy, or also the action sequence of the movie for me, where she's doing the whole, like, jumping on rooftops bit, and she fucking falls. That hurts to watch. Where she just, like, freaking hits the freaking, like, dumpster on the way down and stuff. It's more badass that she gets up after moments like that.
Well, it's kind of like the John Wick thing. Like, John Wick does get hurt. He's not invulnerable. And you see the moments where he's, like, trying to patch himself up. It's just the fact that he keeps on going that makes it badass.
What I like about her, and even like you related to the John Wick character and everything like that, is they show the damage too. Mm-hmm. Like after that fall, when she gets up and she's hanging in that little carport, like she's hurt, man. Like probably a busted rib or two at least. I mean, because she hit fucking hard. But it's just the perseverance and the training and the skill and, you know, the purpose or whatever just makes her keep going. And yeah, it makes her just an ultimate badass.
This is a good example, though, because even though she is kind of playing like a spy-like character, she is a fighter first, whereas a lot of female-led action films are spy first, fighter later. And I'm thinking kind of, what was the one, Atomic Blonde? Kind of comes off that way just a little bit, and Red Sparrow, is that what the one where Jennifer Lawrence was trying to play Black Widow? They think female-led action film needs to be like a spy sleuth first, and I'm really saying sexy first before being able to fight.
Right, I can agree with that, and I think that works here where she's a bit more, the only stages where she really feels awkward is kind of with, like, the Michael Fassbender, like, actual espionage element of it, because she is more of a fighter first. That's the only time she kind of feels out of her element, but even then she still is confident, and she still kind of works her way around that. But we also have to talk about that fight scene with Michael Fassbender is so fucking great, and especially when she throws him through the glass.
Oh no, she straight up fucking like Spartan kicks him in the chest through the glass. I mean, looks like a fucking semi truck hitting a pile of concrete. She kicks the shit out of his chest.
I also love when she has the like scissor legs around his neck, and he looks like Ben Mendelsohn. Like, the more she squeezes, he becomes more like Ben Mendelsohn.
I just love, when she's got him in the triangle. And I love that then she starts, like, she relaxes and starts doing her deep breathing. Everything just to, like, calm herself and stay focused. It's like, God, she is honestly one of the baddest people I've seen on screen in the last, 10 years.
I want her to do more. Like, I would be,
Me
like,
too.
again, she should definitely be doing more of this, but... she kind of fell off, and then she went over and did Deadpool. I liked her in Deadpool. I know she wasn't that big of a role, but no, I really like her. I think people put down the fact that she's not that great of an actress, but I wanted her to be Wonder Woman, which was funny when they called her Wonder Woman in the film. But back when they were casting for Wonder Woman, I was 100% on for her, and I was like, yes, that's what I want Wonder Woman to look like. Sturdy. Not a model, God forbid.
Right. Other movies just have a problem of, like, they do want to kind of put her in, like, the Vasquez role. Because she had that in, like, I believe it was the 6th Fast and Furious movie. There's, like, a henchwoman, and she's barely utilized at all, which is such a shame. She should be on the level of, like, maybe not quite The Rock and Jason Statham, but at least around of, like, a Vin Diesel. Like, I would love to see a growl-off between her and Vin Diesel. At some point, I think they could match up with each other perfectly in that regard. I think just people, unfortunately, feel kind of intimidated with using a woman who has that much power at a certain point. I think it's really unfortunate they kind of have sidelined her to sort of, even in Deadpool, she kind of had like a henchman role, and I wish she had a bit more, at least to be, some like, even like Batista level in, I think, like Spectre. She would be a great like Bond secondary villain as well.
Literally, what I just was thinking, though. I was thinking about her going in like the steps of Batista. And I'm like, yeah, she could be doing the same thing, like going for bigger and bigger roles where she does have scenes where she action, but there's actually some acting to it. But I don't know. Maybe she doesn't want to go that route.
Maybe. I mean, but she's still trying it, but she's just getting just lousy roles. I know she's going to be in The Mandalorian for at least one episode, the new Star Wars show. But other than that, I mean, it's a couple direct-to-DVD action movies. Do people even say direct-to-DVD anymore? I don't even know.
They still say direct-to-video, coming from a direct-to-video podcast.
Wait for the plugs.
But I mean, if you go to Blockbuster, I mean, that's all you see is her movies nowadays.
Blockbuster?
Oh, Adam, we have to sit down.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
What year is it?
As long as Lyndon B. Johnson is president still, I'll be right.
Oh, no. But, speaking of beefy folks, I'll also say, to get to the supporting cast, this was probably the earliest example for me of Channing Tatum actually showing off his prowess as an actor, I would say. Because this is right before 21 Jump Street, and this was the first time I remember seeing Channing Tatum like, oh, he actually is more than just a beefcake. He feels like he has a lot more sort of earnestness in this part than I necessarily anticipated. I think that's kind of baked into his role in the movie, is that people just kind of treat him as, like, a dog to, like, go out and do their bidding. And then later on, especially when he's faced off against Ewan McGregor in the climax of the movie, I was like, wow, Channing has a bit more to him than I expected.
I wasn't all that impressed.
I remember when I saw the trailer, too. I was like, is that the guy from Step Up? Like, I didn't even really know his name yet.
Do you think Channing Tatum is ever going to make that Gambit movie?
No. Absolutely. I really, really don't.
Whenever New Mutants comes out, he'll make that movie.
Whenever Dark Phoenix comes out, even though a trailer literally just came out, I'm still like, no, that's not coming out.
Well, I'm hoping. Yeah, one thing, too, I want to address Ewan McGregor. Can he just have his fucking accent, please? I mean, he's just... Why can't he be Scottish?
Yeah, he's not good at not being Scottish.
No, it's not at all.
He's just kind of mousy and sad when he's not Scottish.
Right, in no way intimidating at all.
You know who also wasn't very intimidating? Fassbender was, like, really meek looking. And I'm so used to him being just really buff and mostly naked that I was just kind of like, what's going on, man? you look really, like, British right now. And I wasn't surprised when she kicked his ass and killed him.
I think that's kind of the point, though, with some of these guys, is they're kind of meant to be sort of these Weasley, especially, I think that's what I love about Ewan McGregor's performance in this movie, is he feels like a slimy piece of shit, who's barely hiding it. I think that's what really works about him, and also, Banderas. I love that Banderas looks just like, hey, I just came back from a vacation, Steven, you want to do a movie? Sure, I'll do it. Hey, Steven, you can shoot while I'm on vacation for the end scene, basically.
Right.
I am still impressed, though, by this whole cast. Like, I'm just, like, I forgot how many great actors were in this for her to beat up, and I was just so happy afterwards.
We almost had a problem. It was almost Dennis Quaid.
Oh, yeah.
Then I would have been really upset and couldn't have watched it.
For those unaware, Adam has a problem with Dennis Quaid.
Huge. For no reason.
For whatever reason.
For no reason.
For nothing. He's never done, he's never personally done anything to me. It's not like, but yeah, I don't like it, the fucking guy.
And we got Bill Paxton instead, which I was a bit sad just seeing it. Like, this is one of his last movies, I think. Yeah, it was one of his last ones. But I like the sort of dynamic they both have. It's just like a father-daughter relationship. It definitely feels just like he basically threw her out into the woods to see what she could do at some young age. It feels like I almost want like the prequel movie of like them training with each other. Basically, I like the fact that
Hannah.
Well, that's true. Which we almost did for the show was our other choice. I also like the fact that he's basically like discount Tom Clancy. Yeah, he's like his actual character. Yeah. I think that really works. But I also like there's a lot more of we should talk a bit more about like the fight sequences, because I think especially the start of this movie with her and Channing Tatum fighting is such a badass way to start this movie, because it's a lot more calm. It's quiet. It almost feels like they're entering like the diner from Twin Peaks. And it's all wholesome. And then he just goes fucking buck wild on her with, like, the coffee. And from there, it's just such a violent and down-to-earth style fight, where especially, like we said, no music at all. And you just hear every single punch and crack of bone and all this other stuff. And it really is a great way to kick this movie off. Just very quiet, innocent, and then immediately into that sequence. I love that. Well, what are some of the other better fight sequences in here for you guys?
I just like it when she strangles people with her legs. That's really cool. I'm into that. I liked her chasing down the guy in Barcelona. You usually don't see chase scenes so realistic to the fact that she has to control her breathing while she's doing it. You can feel how long they are running. And then when she finally gets to him, she just throws like a saucer at him. That was cool. But those moves that she does, like those, honestly, I think of Black Widow, and the fact that that's the kind of choreography I would like if and when a Black Widow film happens. Close quarters combat, which you do see from Black Widow in some, in Avengers and stuff like that. Iron Man 2 is the first time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I want. So if we can get that happening, I might actually want to see Scarlett Johansson play Black Widow again.
I dug the bathroom scene where Bill Paxton's watching, because it's almost like he's watching what she's become when she kills the guy. And just the look of shock on his face, where he's like, oh, fuck.
That's the one fight scene where they actually use music.
Yeah, but I liked the other ones that they already mentioned. But I really also liked the part where Ewan McGregor's on the beach and she just runs up like a fucking freight train on him. Out of nowhere, just to the side of the screen, you just see her running up and she just tackles the shit out of him.
I laughed so hard when she ran up like that. I thought it was so goofy. Actually, a lot of that choreography is a little bit goofy. Like him throwing away the gun.
Yes.
And him like falling and getting his leg trapped in what looks like something he could not get his leg trapped in between the two rocks. I'm like, I don't know about that. It was a little silly at that point, but I still loved it. I was like, yes, drown that bitch.
I mean, you could have replaced the two of them with, like, Lonely Island people, and it could be an SNL digital short.
Yeah.
There's certain points where it almost feels like that. It's almost like a parody of these action movies. And even the factor of, like, him getting stuck on the shore and left to drown even kind of feels like it almost could be a bit. But still, at the same time, it still is very visceral.
Which to bring up that point where she just leaves him to drown, I don't know that her character would do that. I think she would make sure he's dead. To be honest,
you gotta leave something open for Haywire 2, Wired.
Yeah,
Adam,
right.
Haywire 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Exactly.
That was okay. Honestly, as soon as she was done, like, protecting her father, I was like, okay, this could basically end, but we're gonna keep it going for another, 15 minutes? to tie up the loose ends. And then as soon as it went to Antonio Banderas, I was like, oh, he's just gonna get shot like really quickly because we only have like 3 minutes left. So headshot him.
But that's such a great ending, though. Him just turning and saying shit is the perfect ending for this movie. It's such a great final bit, especially, and I love that shot too of where like his girlfriend goes over to answer the door and she gets her ass kicked in the background and we just hear most of it.
Yeah, it's real out of focus. Yeah, that was cool.
And Tony was just like fucking around, like, oh yeah, just drinking, doing bullshit. I like. I think we should also, to segue with that. I also really love how Soderbergh directs a lot of these movies, where it is, as we mentioned, it's kind of like, it's very sort of stripped of any of like huge artifice, except for like he'll add one sort of major element, like the way that certain scenes are lit. He'll make it like either like a very dark blue during the climax, or he actually use like a sort of sepia tone yellow thing for a lot of
yeah,
this.
just like Magic Mike. The man is addicted to sepia yellow.
You have a problem, Stephen.
I watched the trailer with my boyfriend because I wanted to see if he knew about the movie before. And I'm like, guess who directed this? The same guy who directed the other yellow movie we watched, Magic Mike. It was like no surprise. It's like he's like the J.J. Abrams of like lens flare, but with, you know, yellow.
Sepia tones.
Yeah.
Yeah, watch was it Unsane or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Shot on iPhone, still yellow. Like, they actually just used the sepia tone filter.
He loves it. I'm gonna write a paper on it.
He's crazy about it. I bet the inside of his house is so drab and boring. Just a bunch of muted yellows.
But I still think that works, especially, like, I think an underrated aspect of this movie is that whole thing where they're planning out about how they're going to do the Barcelona job, and it's a lot of moments of just, like, them staring at monitors, or them just studying footage and shit like that. I love when Steven Soderbergh does that, because it just makes, once again, this thing that could be an overblown, over-the-top sort of action beat montage feel a lot more procedural, a lot more like they actually have to put work into this before they go in guns a-blazing. I think that makes it a lot more intimate and a lot more interesting, especially just Channing Tatum kind of like looking around bored. At one point, just like, oh fuck, I gotta like look at this footage again. I think that does a great job of like actually getting you to be a bit more invested in the characters.
Yeah, it's definitely realistic, which is nice, sort of. It's not my most exciting moment of watching the movie. I can hardly remember those scenes, to be honest with you.
No, you're right, and I tend to agree with you, Sarah. My thing is, out of all the scenes that I wish there was dialogue, there's no dialogue. There's like scenes with no dialogue when they're actually sort of explaining it or getting into it.
I mean, mainly, you could have gone full Ocean's 11, which obviously those are his biggest successful movies for a reason, because they follow more of like the tropes of like the heist movie with that. Versus, I kind of like, because in more of those scenes you would get like exposition-y dialogue that we don't really need necessarily. I think it means more that it's just like these people are kind of like have day-to-day aspects of this job that would normally just be, you know, very quick cuts to like exposition dialogue and then some big fight sequence happening. As opposed to, I kind of like that you get more of like the minutia day-to-day.
We do get a lot of exposition though, especially, I mean, like she's telling her story. I think that's most apparent when she's, you know, making him name back the names of everyone she spoke about and everything like that. The guy, to Sky High Kid.
Or any scene with Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas is an exposition machine in this movie.
Yeah, I was almost, you know, a little annoyed by it, but I feel like that really kind of falls away, which is nice. Obviously, it needs to be exposition heavy to get you caught up with what the hell was going on, because she's just, you know, beating people up in diners.
But I guess let's go into our final thoughts, since we have a whole nother film to talk about. A lot in a bit. But Sarah, as our guest, go first. Your final thoughts on Haywire.
Haywire is fucking good. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's a like prime example of what a female-led action film should be and could be. It's not a perfect film. I mean, there's reasons why it's sometimes a little bit campy, but I like that part of it. So I'm surprised that it's 2019 and we're not getting more of this.
Adam?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with her. I think it's just a fun action movie. I'm really surprised that this didn't make Gina Carano, you know, a bigger star, or at least potentially lead to her becoming a bigger star. I'm just very curious as to what exactly is the thought process behind that and the changing of her voice and everything else. But I do think this is also one that not a lot of people have seen. I mean, the marketing for this, I remember the previews coming out being everywhere. and wanting to see it from the previews. Like, well, who is this kicking all these guys' asses? But then it just kind of went away. And then it was very quickly in bargain bins and on all the free streaming services and everything like that. I mean, that's how I watched it today. It's on a free streaming service. It's a good action movie.
I think it came out too early.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe rid the Wonder Woman hype and stuff like that. It might have led to maybe something more.
Well, and also if it didn't probably come out in January, where people were just like, "Oh, it's some really bad movie that's dumped in January."
Yeah, nobody goes to the show in January.
Yeah, unless it's unfortunately some like a Liam Neeson movie where they're just like, "Oh, we can go behind him because he does like these Taken style movies." Well, at least they used to.
Right. Yeah. Well,
given certain recent events. But anyway, I also really dig Haywire. It's not like my favorite of Soderbergh. It's definitely slight Soderbergh, but it still fits in like his aesthetic thing that I really dig about just like making genre exercises that are a lot more intimate and kind of throw away most of the artifice except for his occasional artifice that comes in. And I think most of the cast is pretty good. Gina Carano, I do agree, I wish was more of a star, in especially these kind of action movies. And yeah, I think if you did not give it a chance at the time when it came out, definitely give it a chance now. Like Adam mentioned, it's on a bunch of free streaming services. You'll find it, most likely. Speaking of movies maybe you didn't see, but maybe for better reasons, let's go into our second film, Sucker Punch.
You are safe. What you're imagining right now, that place can be as real as any pain. Your fight for survival starts right now.
I'm gonna escape from here. If Blue finds out, we're dead. We're already dead.
This is your journey. If you succeed, it will set you free.
Why'd you guys make me watch this? Be honest.
And speaking of camera filters, oh, God.
Well, I guess I'll field the question since this was my pick. Sucker Punch, which came out March 25th, 2011, from auteur Zack Snyder. I picked this because I think it's a good sort of anti-example, especially with like Haywire. I think it's interesting because Haywire, like I mentioned, has so little artifice, is very much like down to the nitty-gritty about what an action movie can be starring a female lead. Versus here, Zack Snyder made a very lavish, over-budget, sort of blank check dream project of sorts that he'd been thinking of for years, and it wants to disguise itself as a female empowerment movie, but is so much more fetishy.
Oh, this is a teenage boy's like masturbation fantasy.
Yeah,
that's what this movie is. 100%.
And with even more sort of like sexual assault violence, where they're just like it's an empowerment thing because she's able to get past this. It's like no, you're still like completely robbing her of any agency in the reality of what's going on.
Yeah, it's still pretty awful. Yeah,
it's still pretty shitty. So, Sarah, you mentioned to me this is the first time you'd seen this, and you had a great time, right?
How much do you love it?
I think we got to take it back to my relationship with Zack Snyder. I don't like him. Watchmen was the first R-rated film I went to see by myself in a theater. I had just turned 18, and I was very excited. And this is already gonna cause issues, but I don't even like that. Like if we're talking about like his probably one of his best of his films, I dislike Watchmen. I kind of am okay with 300. Don't tell anybody. But I knew what this was. I had an idea. I knew this was like Ed Hardy meets like Hot Topic, douchebag Inception. But I still seeing it and having to sit through this just made me just miserable. It was so long.
It's so long.
It's draining. It just drains your life force with its stupidity.
If it's any sort of comfort, your opinion on Watchmen is not unique. A lot of people don't like Watchmen.
Yeah, it's a very love it or hate it kind of thing. Yeah.
I never watched his whatever director's cut. What's up with Snyder? Why can't he just put out a movie the first time and then get it right? Why does he have to like release an edit? What's up with him?
Well, I think it's because, like, obviously another one of his influences is Ridley Scott, And I'm sure he has, like, such an attachment to, like, oh, but it's like if someone was a fan of Ridley Scott, but only of, like, the Apple 1984 ad. Like, that's his favorite Ridley Scott movie, is that fucking Apple ad. As opposed to any of the other movies that he's done. And I think, especially the case where, for those of you who don't know, this had an extended cut that was released later. I haven't seen the full cut. I've seen some of those deleted scenes. If you told me on paper, like, hey, there's a scene that was deleted from this movie with Oscar Isaac singing, I'd be like, I would love to see Oscar Isaac sing. It's not good. Him and Carla Gugino do a duet that's terrible. Also, though, at the same time, I would argue that Oscar Isaac is one of the few kind of fun things about this movie.
At least he's trying.
I didn't think he was, like, fun in this movie until maybe the second half when he starts killing people. I was like, or, near the end. I was like, ooh, this is fun. He's murdering people. I'm more excited. But that's maybe because I hated all the other characters.
No, that's fair. Hambone was in this, guys.
Why?
For no reason.
Why was he in this?
Could have been anybody. Oh, this fucking movie. It is. I don't think we've stated enough. This movie is so long and so boring. It's a movie that feature scantily clad women using like high-tech weaponry against steampunk Nazi zombies, and you're like, I don't care. Just keep going. Like, I don't care. I don't care about anything in this movie. There is not one thing. The best part of this movie is the lobotomy. Because it's like over. It's done. Stop taking your time. Just hammer it on in there. Grab a little handheld sledge and just go to town. It's just... Oscar... And by the way, Oscar Isaac, when he's in the dream world, he's just Gomez Addams. He just looks at Gomez Addams.
I'm actually watching the original Addams Family show right now for the first time. And, that's all he ever is.
That's true.
The fact that they have not made a live-action Addams film with him...
Well, he's doing the voice in an animated
It's not enough.
And then, young does Emily Browning look? It's almost disturbing. Put her in, like, the little, schoolgirl / baby doll / sailor outfit, and you're like, dude, this is just making me feel
What's
sick.
up with Emily Browning, too? Because between, she did Unfortunate Events, and she was wholesome. And then she was like, hey, let me do this movie. And let me do, Sleeping Beauty, where I'm just, sleeping.
Yeah, and I'm naked the whole movie, and old men, molest me. Great.
Yeah. Okay, Emily.
Yeah, let's do that. Now I'm American Gods, where I'm naked the whole show, but a corpse. Oh, good.
Thanks, Emily. You're doing a great job.
Interesting decisions, I guess, but it's just... God, fuck you, Thomas.
Well, I think it's just a problem with her casting. So she has sort of unfortunately, a fragile sort of China doll style aesthetic to her, and that's all people really want to use her as at the same time. I think that's such a problem. That's why I think American Gods is actually one of the better examples, because she actually gets to be a character, even when she is a corpse. She actually is, at least gets to be like a more three-dimensional, interesting character, I would argue, versus, and some of these other things, she's treated as such an object, especially here. That's the case where she's kind of the protagonist, except, wait, guys, it's not her story, as we find out.
The fact that she is supposedly at first the main character, but she doesn't have a name and she doesn't have a voice. She hardly says anything. And then it switches. I was not impressed by that twist. I was like, yeah, I could tell. She sucks. I didn't care. It was so refreshing to see Haywire, because there was no, hey, this woman was sexually abused and that's why she's buff. Or that's why she's strong and able to do things.
Good point, yeah.
Whereas this was the complete opposite. It's they're sexually abused, so they can mentally try to fight their way out of it, but they can't do anything in real life. I guess it was in real life. That's the other twist. As they walk her through the fucking hallway, they're like, she actually did all these things. Aren't you impressed? No, I'm not impressed.
Because it's this weird 3 levels deep, where it's there's the level where she goes into the asylum. Then there's the level of, she has this fantasy of herself being at this, Moulin Rouge weird, sex club / dance auditorium. And then there's
burlesque.
The other... Right, burlesque. Yeah, it's burlesque starring Cher. That's what it is. And then...
I would have been so much happier, Thomas. Why didn't we watch Burlesque?
Look, I would have had more fun too. Tooch is in it. It has the Tooch. I'm way more interested in that. But then there's also the other layer of all these action sequences that are supposed to be like fun and badass. But my biggest problem, especially with those action sequences, is just I remember distinctly when I watched this the first time. It was my freshman year of college, the first summer I had in college, and my roommate came in while I was watching it on like our at the time modern HD TV, and he was like, "Oh, what is this Sucker Punch?" He's like, "I can't see anything." Like it's so muddy. It's so ugly. Everything is so just like you can barely tell what's going on. And even if you can, like I turned the brightness up specifically for this reason on my laptop when I watched it. It's like I can see what's going on better, but I don't care. Like I was telling Adam before the show started, I read like the first couple paragraphs of an elaborate Zack Snyder stands defense of this, where it's like, actually, it references Hindu culture with how it's 3 levels deep, and I'm like, this is...
Oh my
like,
God.
If you want to have those interpretations, sure, but also, I don't give a shit enough to be invested to hear that interpretation when this is so just, like, flat and ugly and boring on a visual level. So, who gives a shit?
Agree. If you're going to interject something like Hinduism's spiritual levels and certain belief systems in your movie and stuff, it's totally great. Just fucking do it. like that's the thing. It's in there if you look. Well, where? Which I don't mind, subtlety or reading between the lines on things, but if that's in there, where'd you hide it? Under the fucking laser train and the robots? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know exactly what movie you were trying to make. He knows exactly what he made.
It was
a lot of young men will always go out of their way to create things like that to defend movies like this. I mean,
I think a lot of young auteurs do that, period. I mean, men, sure, more so, fine. But I think a lot of young artists go out of their way to defend their artwork and try to make it seem deeper than what it is, period.
But it's weird when it's not your artwork that you're defending. They're like going out of their way to defend.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. Well, that is because, like I said before, I mean, it's a masturbation fantasy movie. That's all. That's why they're defending it. They're defending their dirty little movie.
I have a line from a Letterboxd review to read.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Oh,
a dramatic reading for the evening.
First of all, this is from Graham J. It's one of the top reviews for this film on Letterboxd. I'm just going to read the first line. Watching Sucker Punch is like watching a friend you don't really like play a video game for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's accurate.
You know what really pissed me off about this movie?
Was it more of it?
The plot convention of her dancing to distract people pissed me off so much that I was screaming every time it started. Every time she was about to start dancing and they focused in on her beautiful dead eyes, I was miserable. I was like, fucking hell, it's happening again. If anything else could get them into these action scenes, I did not hate those over-the-top action scenes. I took them as they were. Ridiculous, but at least a little bit entertaining. But anything else was driving me insane.
Like Scott Glenn and Carla Gugino's accent? Oh.
Well, honestly, my big trouble with, Scott Glenn especially is just he's such this random wise man character that comes in, like fucking David Carradine out of Kung Fu, just coming in like, hey, 2 in the hen is worth 2 in the bush, or whatever bullshit he says. and that would work so much better, honestly, I would say, if you had, Carla Gugino do this. Because what he's trying to do is sort of, draw these parallels between the different dimensions. And it's wouldn't it make more sense if you had somebody who wasn't just a bus driver at the end, be the sage?
What the fuck? I know. It should have been Carla Gugino. A very good point. I didn't even think of that, but it definitely should have been.
Right, did she have any sort of authority in the film other than being Russian?
Exactly. It's the same thing where you have these faceless villain characters that constantly fight against. Shouldn't Oscar Isaac have been one of those guys? Or the cook, or any of those other guys who were just in one specific level? It just feels so weird.
He should have been a different version of him as the main villain in every level of Oscar Isaac. It definitely should have been, because he was the worst one there. It would have made sense, but nah, nope. He's just Gomez.
We would have gotten Oscar Isaac doing, like, Peter Sellers-style, like, costume changes, which would have been great.
That would have been awesome. That would have made the movie.
Imagine Oscar Isaac as, like, a Nazi orc guy. Great. I'm so down for that.
I usually, when we watch these kind of, like, over-the-top films, like, I saw Jupiter Ascending for the first time pretty recently.
Okay.
I've always liked who plays the villain in these types of films. Oscar Isaac almost didn't go as far as I wanted him to go. Until, like I said, until near the end. Up until then, I just was like, oh, he's skeevy. I'm not really that impressed. He could have been a little bit more insane, and I would have been a little more...
Well, yeah, if you're comparative to Eddie Redmayne from Jupiter Ascending. Yeah.
Eddie Redmayne...
not on that level.
Basically, every film I watch for podcasts these days is, like, bad, and then, like, the villain is actually the best part of the whole thing.
Well, yeah, because he gets a chance to be more over the top in that. Like, my favorite bit of the whole movie is him going up to, I believe it's Jamie Chung, after he's like, well, thank you for helping us out, but also, we hate snitches, and then he shoots her in the back. Like,
that was Vanessa Hudgens.
Vanessa Hudgens, yes, that's right. He shot Jamie Chung earlier for that, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like these characters run together.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like you can't tell women apart.
But they got such cool names, guys.
Shut up, Gina Carano. Anyway.
Their names, guys. Their names are so cool. Sweet Pea and Rocket and Blondie. And you get the Blondie one. It's kind of ironic because she's ethnic, but we're going to call her Blondie. I mean, this is just a piece of shit.
It's such a shame because, like, I actually usually defend Jenna Malone a lot, but she's pulling, like, a Jenna Maroney level terrible performance in this movie.
Yes.
Like, particularly...
She just watched Saved.
Watch Saved, or she's the best part of, like, those Hunger Games movies, honestly, for me. There's a few other things, but, like, she... Especially the bit where she has to say... Where she follows up Abby Cornish, she's like, we'll be dead, and she says, we're already dead. The worst.
Yeah.
It's so terrible. Really, to get back on the Zack Snyder of it all, that guy works so much better when he has a guiding hand. Like, honestly, he's someone like a Terrence Malick for me. I know that's blasphemy comparing those two people. They would both work so much better as cinematographers to me than directors. Because they have a distinct visual style. I just think they need more of a guiding hand to help them along, because that's what worked about, honestly, my favorite of his movies, and Adam, I think, would agree with me, is the Dawn of the Dead remake, which was his first movie, because he had, one, the basic tenet of, like, the Dawn of the Dead movie, and then also a really great reimagining script by James Gunn that guided him along and made a really fun but engrossing and modernized version of that zombie consumerism story. That worked great. And he has not been able to get near that since. So that's why I'm kind of glad his next project is like a Netflix zombie movie. Well, I'm curious about that one. Yeah, I'm way more on board with that than him getting sort of failing upwards for some reason. Where, like, Watchmen was not a huge hit, yet he was able to get this to go out. And you figure, oh, that's it, that's done for him. Then he leads the DC universe with, like, a Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, Justice League. And why... R.I.P. DCEU. Except for Wonder Woman and Aquaman. They're alive. That's literally it, though.
It's just no extended universe, though, and that's fine by me, so pour one out for the DCEU.
And I found out the reason he even got that was because when Man of Steel was coming out, that was in the middle of, like, the Schuster and the creator of Superman, like, the big lawsuit that was going on.
Is it Siegel and Schuster?
Right, yeah. and they needed to make a movie in order to, like, keep the rights of Superman, basically, to do that. So it's just like, oh, fuck, Zach, you got it.
Well, I'm sure that the Nolans, like, taking a step back, even though they helped write and produce Man of Steel, right?
Well, Christopher came up apparently with the story and was, like, a producer on Man of Steel. Where basically, like, he came up with the story with, like, Goyer about, like, hey, how about if Superman was less of, like, what if we focus more on him being an alien and being disconnected from the world? Yeah, sure, let's do that. And then Chris said, bye.
What if he just, like, snapped people's necks? That'd be cool, right? Yeah, let's do it.
Right, let's betray one of the major things about Superman. You know, that he never kills anybody and that he protects people. Let's have him destroy a city full of people and then kill the main bad guy.
I would love if he just had, like, hey, Zach, do you have any, like, design ideas for the Superman suit? I think I had this, and it's just Henry Cavill in a schoolgirl outfit for this movie. Which I would be way more down for, honestly.
Honestly.
What about the bad guys? What about their suits? Well, everybody else's armor is going to be CGI. Everybody's going to be in CGI except Superman. But his cape, full CGI.
Oh, man, he loves CGI.
He fucking loves CGI. It's almost as if we're not talking about this piece of shit movie Thomas recommended. Well, recommend is a strong word. I apologize.
How dare you say that to me? But I think you have a good point. Let's get into our final thoughts then on Sucker Punch. Sarah, do you have anything to say that's not vitriolic noises at this point?
Can we delete it? Can we just delete the movie?
Can we sneak into the Warner Brothers databases and delete it?
just take it down. I'm done with it. I mean, it's been out for a while. I could see how certain people would feel like this was an exciting and interesting movie that came out. An interesting mess. Coming into it now, watching it this year for the first time, it just feels really gross to me, and I don't want to ever see it again. Don't make me watch it again, Thomas.
Next time you're on, no matter what the topic, it'll just be Sucker Punch. Adam.
This is just a bad movie, man. It's the parts that are exciting for a flash, and then you kind of like, oh yeah, wait, this is still giving off a very sort of gross vibe. It's a gross movie, dude. I just don't. I don't. No, not for me. It just, like I said, the movie should have opened with her getting the lobotomy to Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. Like, just opened with that, then end credits. You know, that would have been fine. Like a short. It's just, I'm just grossed out by it.
Yeah, I echo those grossed out thoughts. Despite me picking this movie, it was because we have a good and bad gimmick with her show, and I thought this perfectly illustrated all the problems with like what a sort of, especially like a male director thinks a female-led action movie should be. Because it's like, oh man, you know, women are like constantly screwed over all the time. I'm gonna make my movie about how they fight back against the system. And it's like, well, except you made like a really like exploitive and fetishistic and, worst of all, just boring fucking movie about that concept that, aside from some people trying, like I'd say Carla Gugino or Oscar Isaac, having a few flashes of interest, it just feels like such a skeevy sort of, like Adam mentioned, masturbatory fantasy. It feels like this was etched in Zack Snyder's notebooks when he was like 14, and he just kind of adapted. That's the story of the movie, based on a story by Zack Snyder. It's those fucking drawings that he did in his goddamn etchings. It's so ridiculous, and especially illustrated by, if you ever watch the extended cut, there's a whole scene that was supposed to climactically end the movie involving John Hamm basically giving Emily Browning the illusion that she is choosing to have sex with him.
Oh!
That was...
Oh, that would have added so much more depth and just really redeemed the whole thing.
Exactly, so if you thought this was bad, it was almost slightly even worse.
God! Ugh.
So, Sucker Punch. Fun.
Sucker Punch to me right in the face. Oh, God.
What's wrong with Zack Snyder?
We don't know. We're still not sure. But that is the end of our discussion of our double feature for the evening. We will be picking our two movies at the end of the episode. But first we have some things to go through for closing out. We have feedback to read. We got a lot of feedback about where we asked all of you via the Facebook page and the Twitter page, which is at DEDBpod, about your favorite and least favorite female-led action films. And we're going to go ahead and start at the top with some I believe Sarah knows quite well, a former guest of ours, Shaquille Lambert.
I don't know that guy.
Never heard of him. Has this to say, best... I mean, Furiosa's maybe one of the greatest action heroines since Sarah Connor. Also, Hannah's one of the most underrated action films of this decade. Worst, Mila Jovovich is an okay actress, but a solid action star hampered by being in some terrible shit. But Ultraviolet might be the worst of the worst. I'm going to read through our feedback here, and we'll comment at the end of it for the rest of the stuff here. Brian Kane says, Furiosa sort of reset the gold standard. She's hard to top. Also worth mentioning Alita Battle Angel, which barely tapped the surface of the sadistic, bloodthirsty shenanigans that the character will get into in the books. And the worst recent example, I think, is Lucy. James Rodriguez says, Best, be it through espionage or breathlessly battling through a building, Lorraine Broughton is a fantastic heroine, exceptionally portrayed by Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde. Elizabeth Salander is also a brilliant pop culture icon, preferably when she's not being reworked as a Bond-style figure. Worst, what the fuck was Salt? I just remember it existed and can only recall that the role was originally intended for Tom Cruise, but to be honest, the more I remember about the divergent YA archetype, that is, looks at Wikipedia, Triz Pryor. Will Torres says, I would count Ellen Ripley as the best. Worst, I guess Kristen Stewart in the Snow White and the Huntsman bullshit. Once she was in armor, holding up a sword, I was like, fantasy does not literally mean total and complete bullshit. Oliver Sloan says, bought Sucker Punch on Blu-ray. I believe it's seriously misunderstood. The fantasy action scenes are incredible. Luke McBride echoes that with Sucker Punch, definitely. Not terribly good in any event, but I still love it. Optimus Prime 99 on Twitter says, DC's best badass leading ladies are Wonder Woman and Catwoman. And then Stephen D says, good Charlize Theron and Atomic Blonde for the stairwell fight alone. A large chunk cast of Black Panther, leads from 70s Shaw Brothers films. Bad, I'm going to say Sarah Michelle Gellar in Buffy, because if she were actually to throw a punch, she'd probably break her damn thumb. Which I wanted to say, I think that's true of pretty much anybody who stars in these movies, though, because they're not stunt people who actually fight. So I think that's a bit unfair. But any of those strike anybody's fancy?
Do you think he means Halle Berry's Catwoman?
I fucking hope not.
No,
that's what I was thinking.
He posted a picture, and it was Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll give him that one. Cool.
Can we have like a action hero that's not the villain?
Yeah, she's more of a anti-hero, really.
Yeah, still. I just mean like a lead character, hero. Wonder Woman obviously meets those requirements.
I haven't seen Atomic Blonde yet. I keep meaning to, but I don't even... Is it even worth it?
I like
bisexual lighting.
That's true, and Charlize Theron... and he mentioned the stairway fight scene. It's from one of the two directors of John Wick. It's the one who didn't go on to do, like, Deadpool 2. Oh, no, it is the one who did Deadpool 2.
Right, yeah.
And some of the other ones. David Leitch, yeah. I think, like, that stairway fight alone is worth watching. And also it's got James McAvoy hamming it up. So that's also fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I would say. Right. But and then obviously, like, everyone mentioned it, but yeah, Furiosa and Fury Road for sure.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree.
What I like about that is how Fury Road is like the Johnny Bravo of Johnny Bravo. I meant to say Johnny Guitar. You know, do you ever see Johnny Guitar?
I don't believe I have. I'm not familiar with it.
It's a Western film where you think it's about a man who plays guitar, but actually the main character is a female like owner of a bar, and it's amazing. And it's just a switch around. Like literally the title of the movie is about the man, but the whole movie is about women.
Okay,
yeah.
I gotta check this one out. That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, and some people like have this issue with. Like, I saw this stupid comment all the time when Fury Road came out, like, "Oh, it's for something called Mad Max. She's sort of like a side character." That's kind of the point from like Road Warrior on with those movies, is that he kind of like comes into a story that's already got like sort of main characters, and he just sort of mixes things up. And I like the fact that he does that with Furiosa. That it's just more of like, hey, I'll help you out with this, but this is obviously your fight, and I'm just going to help you out. And that's what makes, like, one of my favorite shots in recent movie history is her and all the other survivors, like, rising up at the end of that, and then he just looks up and, like, nods and then disappears through the crowd. I love that so much.
I agree. That's one of my favorite parts about the Mad Max movies in general, is that the world is going on no matter what. He's just passing through all the time.
Yes. Total man with no name thing, yeah.
Yep, 100%.
But that's an ensemble.
No, I agree.
Right.
I think more or less what it seems to be happening here with most of the feedback is people just naming who they think are strong female action characters. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like they're really going on the films alone. Like, I wouldn't count Ripley as... I mean, maybe in the later movies, but she was definitely more of an ensemble character.
Yeah, it's no problem. Like, I'm not blaming them. In the end, there's just not that many to pick from.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's very true.
That was one of the major problems with the picking on this one for me.
And Stephen D also had this to mention in terms of some feedback just from our other recent episodes. In reference to our last episode, he said, honestly, can't tell if Demon Knight is underrated or just plain unseen. It definitely has peak Billy Zane, though. Yes, we definitely agreed with that.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, you said you listened to the last episode. Had you seen Demon Knight?
Oh, no, I haven't seen either of the films you talked about in that episode.
Oh, Demon Knight's so good.
I do like Billy Zane a lot, by the way.
Oh, then you got to see this movie.
It's peak Zane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we watched one of the Scorpion Kings, and he was fantastic in it. I mean, if we're talking about over-the-top villains that I loved, he did amazing. It was the best.
So funny. Him and Rod Perlman was his brother.
It was so good.
Yeah.
Well, imagine Billy Zane as, like, evil Aladdin genie.
Yeah, that's what I imagined him as already, so...
That's just him.
This movie was made for you in 1995, for sure. And then Mallory Somerville, at Rosemary's Bay on Twitter, responded to our episode about Moonlight and Driving Miss Daisy about, y'all did such a beautiful tribute to Moonlight on the show. Even though I've seen it a few times, it made me want to watch it again immediately. We appreciate that. I'm really proud of how that episode turned out, especially how relevant it was come the Oscars this year.
What the fuck? I was literally... Dude, I knew, because I watched it, I'm like, all right. As soon as they announced Best Picture winner, I literally swear I heard you and Jonathan both go, oh, what the fuck? Like, at the same time.
I would have been throttling someone if Bohemian Rhapsody won.
Yeah, no, I was definitely hoping that wasn't going to, but I definitely didn't want Green Book to win either.
Green Book was just more of like, yeah, I expected this, honestly. To a certain degree.
I didn't watch the Oscars, I skipped.
Yeah. No.
I don't like any of these movies that are probably going to win. Honestly, 8th Grade was my favorite film of last year. So I was kind of out as soon as it wasn't really nominated. So I was like, okay, cool. Good talk.
Is that the one,
Bo Burnham.
Yeah. I wanted to see that one too.
Yeah,
great movie. So kudos to Mahershala Ali, and no real kudos to anything else about Green Book, though, because fuck that movie in general. We want to, of course, thank all of you out there who've provided that feedback for us. We also want to thank some other people. We want to thank Chris Oliver for the intro and outro music on the show. Listen to more of his music at chrisoliver.bandcamp.com. Thanks to Emily Scarda for the art that's used on her show. She accepts commissions at fiverr.com/eescarda. And of course, we want to thank Sarah Sorrentino, our guest for the evening. Sarah, plug yourself. I know you don't usually plug on your shows, but if you can, plug yourself here.
Okay, I'm plugging. You ready?
Yeah.
So, I am associate editor at Talk Film Society. As a website where we publish reviews and articles and a ton of podcasts. There's a whole podcast network, so you can always follow Talk Film Society on any of your podcast listening options. I have 2 podcasts. Why? Because I hate myself. The first is We Forgive You, which is at We Forgive You Pod, where we forgive the worst films from your favorite directors and your favorite franchises. And also I have Sequels with 2 E's, SEE, and that's where I watch direct-to-video sequels with Shaq and Ali, and it's been pretty fun laughing at those.
It's a great show. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, they're both really fun shows.
That's it. I have to stop making podcasts. I'm guesting on more podcasts, so I stopped making more of my own podcasts.
Well, this was actually an intervention because you have a problem, Sarah.
I really do have a problem. I came up with another one like last week, and I cut it off. I was like, no.
You're hurting the people around you by doing this.
My cat's just meowing in the background, like, please come back.
And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, as I mentioned, at DEDBpod. We also have an email where you can email feedback, doubleedgedoublebill@gmail.com. You can also follow me at my own individual account at NotTheWho'sTommy, and I also do writing at marianithomas.wordpress.com, where I'll do film reviews and other things like that. And Adam, I believe, is trained to be a badass in his own right, somewhere in the distance.
Dunkin' Donuts, baby.
The most badass place of all.
Mm-hmm.
And also make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or any of the various other podcast streaming platforms, like Sarah kind of mentioned, like a Stitcher or Spotify or YouTube. We also have a YouTube channel, any of those places, and rate and review us there so you can give the show more visibility because we are unseen. Please give us more visibility. You too can help a starving Adam who wants attention.
For the cup of coffee. The cup of coffee. You can help us.
For sure. But you know who's going to help us right now is Sarah before we get out of here, because we are doing our picking for next week in honor of Captive State coming out. We decided to do dystopian future films. And I have the 2 good movies that I've assigned 2 numbers to, between 1 and 10. And Adam's done the same thing for 2 bad movies that fit that dystopian future aesthetic, though we don't know what the others picked. And usually each of us would pick a number between 1 and 10 in order to seal the fates for next week. But when we have a guest like Sarah here, she picks a number between 1 and 10 for the 2 choices. So for my 2 good ones, Sarah, number between 1 and 10.
6.9.
Nice. Well, funny, at number 7, so you were very close to it, is a dystopian future movie that's honestly one of my favorite films of all time, and I'm really excited that we get to talk about it. It's Terry Gilliam's Brazil from 1985.
Oh, boy. All right.
Oh, great conflict.
Been a long time, and I don't remember it positively. So
Fair.
We will see.
You're welcome.
And what was your other one, Thomas?
My number 2 choice was also another Terry Gilliam film, but one that's a bit more popular. It's the 1995's 12 Monkeys.
I like that one a bit better, as I remember. That's a good choice.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
All right, and now for Adam's 2 bad choices, Sarah.
Oh, I don't have a funny one now. I wish I had thought ahead of time. I could only think of making a 69 joke. 2.
At number 3, I have the return to the Corman Empire of the franchise with Death Race 2050.
Oh, okay. I haven't even seen the original Death or any Death Race.
Oh, Thomas, you just got fucked.
I mean, I did give you Sucker Punch, so I guess it's only fair.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think this might be Santa's sleigh level.
Oh.
Yeah.
No.
My other choice was Escape from L.A.
That's what I have seen, and I do hate that movie a lot.
That's really funny. I'm going to have to watch Escape from LA soon. I'm a little scared.
Oh, it's bad.
Yeah. I've never seen Escape from New York.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Well, I mean, to be fair, you could make yourself more disappointed and watch Escape from New York and lead into that, because that's
what I'm going to have to do.
And then just watch Lockout with Guy Pearce, because it's basically the third one.
Literally, they got sued for ripping off Carpenter for that, and they lost. They literally lost for that, which is amazing. But thank you, Sarah, for coming on and having a bit of fun with us. Thanks for shooting the gun like the badass that you are and picking those choices.
Pew, 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 pew. That's what it sounds like?
No, it's bang, bang, bang. Until next time, let's go ahead and pew pew out of here, Adam.
Long live the Tooch.
Long live the Tooch. Good night.